In our last episode, we went through the amazing process of connecting with family. You actually got to talk to your mother on the phone.
Yes, it was quite an incredible experience.
And the next step for all this is getting that face-to-face. So this episode's all about that. Welcome back to Finding Gina Marie, our video podcast about discovering family and our journey to eventually relocate to Europe. This is episode 8. If you've missed any of the other episodes, we'll put some links in the description, or you can find anything you need on findingginamarie.com. My name is Kevin.
And I'm Judy.
So part of the discovery of family in the last episode was that the two places that we lived, where we grew up in Buffalo and where we live now in San Francisco, tied directly into where you found family. So in Buffalo, you had
2 sisters.
And over here in San Francisco area,
an aunt and another aunt and cousins and my mother living in the same state.
All right. So we've got a whole bunch of family in California. We've got a bunch of family that was in Buffalo and still is. So now we have this amazing connection that we made somehow. What happens next after this initial connection?
Up until now, we've spent the majority of our adult lives with your family. And I absolutely love your family. And and I feel like they are my family.
They thoroughly love you and certainly are amazed that I found someone so wonderful to spend my life with.
They've always really embraced me as one of their own, and I've really felt like one of their own. Family is super important to them. Right. And so I've felt extremely grateful to be part of the Hochter clan. But there is something also that's pretty special about moving to San Francisco and then suddenly finding there are a bunch of people that are my family. Right. And that's just really unexpected, and I think just a huge blessing. I feel like when we went into this whole journey, I had like 1 or 2 things on my wish list for what would happen. And I just kind of feel like there's been one thing after another, after another, after another, that has been more precious than the last that I would never have even asked for. So I just really feel like the universe has just given us so much through this whole experience.
I think of DNA testing as pretty rare. And to find out that you had enough family members on that DNA site that you actually connected with them was amazing to me. I really didn't expect that. So it was a surprise to me that that even worked out.
Well, and the truth is there are maybe 2 people that have shown up as a close relative. Yeah. You're not wrong to have felt that way.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it was only a couple, but it just seemed like it quickly spread so much. And I don't know, it was days, not even weeks that you connected with a bunch of people. So you got this voicemail from your mother, and that evening you had a conversation with her. What happened?
There was a bunch of back and forth first in order for us to finally connect. And I actually think that helped us to connect because it was just a little fumbling around. I left a voicemail. She picked up the phone. I don't know. It was a little bit confusing and chaotic, but it just kind of helped us to get to brass tacks and maybe took away the most uncomfortableness that maybe we would have had otherwise. So It was an incredible conversation. My mother was very forthcoming and shared a little bit about the details about my birth and the love that she had for me and how difficult it was for her to make the decision and how she was just very young, and shared information about family medical history.
There's a lot in 2 hours.
It was a lot in 2 hours. It was lovely. And I had my fountain pens and I was writing down all of the different things that were happening just so that I could remember some of it.
So you're justifying this trip to Florence and the fact that you took down notes for your mother's conversation with them.
No, but I will just say, the whole
memory of it
and the specialness of it, which all originated in Italy.
Yeah. How did you end the conversation with your mother? Was there next steps or was there just...
I think we agreed to continue talking. And
that's good. After all these years of connecting, one conversation was good. One phone call, we're done.
Well, you can't honestly take that for granted.
That's true.
We actually did say, well, I would like to talk to you more. I would like to talk to you more. And we just kind of agreed to continue our conversation, which it wasn't a given that would happen.
That's true. I take it for granted now because the relationship is so good today with you and all your relatives that it was an assumption that it was immediately like that and always going to be like that. But you're right. It makes no sense at all to assume that you're going to get along with people you have never really spent any time with.
We exchanged email addresses And obviously we had each other's phone numbers. And afterwards I sent a note to her via email. And, you know, it was one of those things where you think about, well, how do I say love? Do I say fondly? Do I say warmly? Like, how do you end a note with someone who's your birth mother, but yet who you've had no actual relationship with up till this point?
Yeah.
And so I think I don't even remember how I responded. I didn't say love initially, but I did say, could I call you mom? And she said, absolutely, I would like nothing more. And I think that actually set the stage for our relationship to grow and develop. And it wasn't very long before we were each saying love to each other. But I think we were trying to also respect each other's boundaries and not, at least on my end, I wasn't trying to be too pushy into her life, still trying to understand that this all had taken a while for her to be comfortable enough to connect with me. And I definitely didn't want to do anything to harm it or just to be too familiar as we were getting to know each other.
Okay, so you got this wonderful relationship with your mom. Right off the bat, it was a good conversation. What was the next family interaction? Was it with your mother again, or did you connect with somebody else?
My aunt, who lives in San Francisco, introduced herself shortly after my conversation with my mother. And her birthday was the beginning of February, and my mother was maybe just a little bit uncomfortable with her meeting me because we lived in the same city before my mother had a chance, which I completely understand.
I've met everybody in the family, and then here's
Mom's
mom.
the afterthought, which absolutely was not what either of us desired.
Right.
So it was kind of fun to talk some more via email, but then also over the phone with this aunt, and just kind of share some exciting things even about San Francisco because she's lived here for a while.
Okay, so this is the beginning of 2020. Are we in February at this point? Are we still in January?
Yes, this was February.
This is February.
So now that my mother and I had connected, I had heard from various family via the 23andMe platform, and there were people through Facebook that connected. And so I was starting to get some traction as being the new kid on the block in the family.
Okay.
And honestly, at this point, I felt like I needed to tell more of my family. So it was around this time that my mother was trying to coordinate some sort of in-person conversation, a meetup. And so we were trying to figure out what that would look like. And I felt like it was important at that point to talk to my family about finding my birth mother and finding all of this lovely family.
Had you not talked to them at all about it yet? No,
not my adopted mother's aunts, which were people that I was probably closest to, or my cousins.
But your brothers knew.
My brothers knew, but not really anybody else.
All right.
And so I made these calls, which was very nerve-wracking unnecessarily because I had talked with one aunt and she was so understanding. She said, in fact, I don't know how you haven't been curious about this all along because I probably would have found out way sooner.
Well, and they know you. They know you can't leave presents wrapped.
That's not fair. That is not fair.
All right, I'm teasing, but you are curious about things.
I'm certainly curious. In fact, the old adage, curiosity killed the cat. I've always had an appendage to that, which has been, but satisfaction brought him back.
How many 9 lives did you use getting curious?
To every single person's credit, each person individually restated the same thing over and over again. You're entitled to this information. Your mother would have been extremely understanding and happy for you. And we are happy for you. We don't resent any part of you doing any of this. We're just thrilled that this has happened for you. And they were all very excited. And I think, it felt like reality TV in some respects.
So your coworkers had it. Now your extended family's getting involved in the Gina Marie reality show of her finding family.
It definitely gave me peace in my heart. And I think there was even comments about, your mother in heaven has been orchestrating this all along.
You were starting to piece together more of your family, your birth family. How was that going? How was that process of cataloging all these new family members?
Well, it's interesting because especially when I was trying to figure out who was who, and before I'd actually even met my mother or talked to her, I'd found out her name finally. But It has a very typical Italian family where everybody's named after everybody else in the family. So trying to get to who this person is meant that there were, 6 other family members with that same name or middle name or variation of the name. So it was really tricky to do some of the sleuthing on my own because I never felt like I could find who, with 100% certainty, who somebody was and how they fit in.
I think I got confused because I heard a few names hit me, and then I heard a few other names hit me, and then you told me, oh, no, that's the same person.
Right, because people had nicknames, and some people used their first name and their middle name, and so then that's even more confusing, and there's stories behind everybody's name. So, well, her name's actually this, but she goes by that, and it was just, just super precious, and I enjoyed every minute of it. But it was, when you're first learning who everybody is, it's quite confusing to say, okay, now this person is this person, and do I maybe... That's why I was so glad to have written everything down. Yeah. Because sometimes it was, oh, okay, well, I heard this name this way, and then I heard this name this way, and then I could ask questions. Oh, that's the same person, but some people refer to that person by a nickname.
Right. Well, that's how I knew if people really knew who my dad was, because his birth name is William Francis Hochter. But if you knew him, he was Fran or Franny. And when people would say, so how's Bill? Like, who's Bill?
So I felt like things were really clicking along. But at the same time, there's just this awkwardness about, am I moving too fast? Am I communicating too much? And I know that I was way too much in my head.
This is what you do anyway.
Yes.
You do get in your head about a lot of things and overthink things or worry what other people think. Am I such a pest? Is this more than they wanted? All that stuff, when they were just thrilled to have you talking to them.
Well, sure. You just never know. And wanting to be mindful that I'm a pretty open book and I express myself fairly freely, but I also am mindful that maybe I could be a lot. And so I didn't want to be overwhelming to anybody on the other end of it. I didn't want to wear out my welcome or just move at a pace that was too fast for everybody else. So I really tried to restrain myself and not overthink, if somebody hasn't heard from me or if somebody hasn't called me or contacted me, that it wasn't that they were immediately shutting me out. I think I mentioned some of this because I know that there are going to be people out there who are in a similar situation, maybe meeting their birth family for the first time or something like that. I'm hoping that it's helpful for other people having this experience to know that they aren't alone and that there's maybe no wrong way about how to feel. And looking back, we were moving pretty quickly. And I felt like maybe this gap of 55 years had shrunk to almost nothing. We just were getting to know each other, and there was just joy in spending time connecting with one another. And in fact, we exchanged Valentine's Day gifts, and I don't know, it was just a lovely time. Around then, my mother had said that she was working on having us meet in person. And then I got an email from my mother saying that I arranged it and this is what the plan was going to be. And I think this was my turn to kind of be overwhelmed and a little bit nervous. So in fact, I had called my aunt and said, help me to understand this a little bit more, because this aunt had graciously offered to host the event at her community, and my mother would be flying in. A couple of cousins were also going to be there from my mother's side. And it was going to be this family gathering and introduction. It was going to be a weekend, and I couldn't quite picture how it was going to work because we were going to be sleeping at this venue, which I knew nothing about.
I was more confused because you were saying, well, maybe Megan can come with us. I'm like, us? Don't you want to meet your mother first? I mean, don't you want to? This seems like a very personal thing that may be awkward to have other people around. And then you were telling me that it's, because this is the aunt that's across the Bay Bridge from us in north of Oakland. And I'm saying, well, that's not that far. So we certainly can just drive over there. That's not a big trip. Or I think Megan and I were both a little concerned that you were pulling us into this when you should have this one-on-one first, and then we can come join. But the way it was structured, it started to make more sense. Like, okay, I guess if we're going to be there and there's going to be a lot of family there, you said, I just want everyone to meet you too. I don't want to do this alone. And it was hard for me because I felt like it was such a personal, I felt like I was intruding on your time with your mother.
And it was frustrating to me because I felt like, why is my family not wanting to go with me? And yes, you made it clear, well, this is this private event and you should experience it one-on-one. But it wasn't going to be one-on-one. It was going to be several family members.
But I didn't get that at first. I didn't know. I was like, what do you mean there's going to be a bunch of family? It's like, how did they do this? How did your mother pull this off where a bunch of family? And I was still coming to grips with, there's enough local family or family not too far away that you can actually do this.
Right. And I wanted to, but I wanted support from you all as well. And I wanted the people closest to me to also meet and get to know my mother and start building these relationships together, as well as with the cousins and aunts. And I just wanted to also be able to maybe decompress and share my thoughts and kind of have you all to share your feelings about how things went. And I knew I was going to want to talk through it afterwards or during it at some point and feel like I had a support group and people who had similar experiences that could then share with me.
And in retrospect, it makes perfect sense. There was really no reason why Megan and I wouldn't be there. And it made perfect sense that we got to meet all these family members and share this experience with you. I think we were all just wrapping our heads around this whole situation. It was all so new. And it, like you said, it was happening pretty fast.
Once I kind of understood how it was going to go, I was a bit more comfortable. But I'm the type of person that will drive out to an unfamiliar place, kind of scope it out, get an understanding of what it all looks like. I kind of am a person who wants to understand the rules of engagement before I go into uncharted territory.
Plus you're a planner.
And I'm a planner. Yeah. And I knew my mother had really worked hard to orchestrate the perfect experience. Right. And really it ended up being amazing. Because I didn't have control over the situation, it was a little bit disconcerting for me initially.
Now you know how I feel when you have a strong Italian directing your plans for the next event that's going to happen. Hey.
Well, and it has been interesting how these people that I really have never spent time with, we have so much in common with. Yeah. And, the sake of nature over nurture, and there are so many personality traits that we all share just organically, and it is actually quite amazing. It's lovely, and it's actually like one of the most precious gifts because I don't know, I feel like I'm with people that get me because they're the same way.
And your uncle is not your blood relative, but he's by marriage. He and I were talking at the reunion about how similar all of you women were in that side of the family, and he said, and it takes forever to say goodbye. I said, oh, yes, it does. They're going to be at this for a while. We just stood back and let it all happen because you had physical traits that were similar. You definitely had personalities that were similar. It was shocking that you did not grow up in the same environment as this family because there was so much that was connected.
More than I could have ever asked or hoped or dreamed for.
So after all this planning and understanding that who was going and what we're doing, I remember driving over there and finding this really cool looking community that they lived in, going in, finding their house, pulling up, and then trying to figure out what we're going to do now. Because I really did want to record you meeting your mother, but I had no clue where she was going to be or where people were going to be. This was not, we didn't know we hadn't scouted the territory. We couldn't. It was a gated community. And so I'm fumbling to get out of the car and get a camera ready, and someone was coming out the front door. I had no idea who this person was.
For all of the planning we did, we didn't actually plan the actual meeting, the brass tacks, how that was going to go.
The critical point.
The critical points. So I didn't know if it was going to be my aunt whose home it was who answered the door, or if it was going to be my mother. I just didn't know. So I didn't want to have my aunt meet me first. I was trying to have somebody else go in first, but my mother is the one who ended up coming out.
Right, and she saw me first, which was not what I wanted. I'm like, no, don't look at me first. I'm not important here. The other person's more important. So I was trying to get out of the way and try to record this, and it was not that movie moment that I wanted it to be.
No, it wasn't. And at the same time, it was just sweet and loving and precious. Yeah. And I feel like it was so much more organic and comfortable than I expected it to be. I felt like when we were hugging each other, I didn't cry, and I was a little bit surprised about that. But I actually felt like I just was coming home. It didn't feel like there was time or distance or anything else. Right. It just felt so natural, as though time hadn't passed. And I also think that it helped that we had talked on the phone so much and that we had been communicating via email so much. Because honestly, I felt like we knew each other. It didn't feel like two strangers meeting. It felt like we were just seeing each other after a long absence. So it just felt really, really happy.
It looked like you two just got connected right away. There was no awkwardness. The awkwardness was mine trying to figure out how to record this beautiful moment. The whole event was so well done and so well planned. And all the family there was so welcoming.
Did you really feel like at the time, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I'm here to be part of this?
Definitely. Yeah, I don't know how I would have explained it to myself later that I skipped this moment. I don't know what was in my head. I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't expecting to meet so much family, for one thing. I didn't know what the plan was. So I would have missed out on meeting a lot of people that aren't just in San Francisco or an hour away. And the fact that Megan and I both felt like they just opened arm, hugged, welcomed, good Italian, loving family, just embracing us. It was a beautiful thing.
It was really perfect, and they did so much to have us feel extremely welcomed, and we had all exchanged gifts and
food. We had wine. We had Prosecco, and
oh yes, I think that was actually one of the cool things. Is it felt like I was with an Italian family.
Yeah.
And
you were with an Italian family. There was no doubt about that.
Well, and actually I had expressed that I had always owned the Italian heritage part of myself. Right. So it's been cool all along that there'd be somebody sharing, oh, this is a famous musician that we follow. Here's Italian cooking that we follow. And it's just, I felt like everything that I've ever wished or dreamed to be part of this Italian family was coming true for me now. And I was also just completely blown away at how natural and comfortable and welcoming everybody was. When you think about the fact that these are people that you've never met in your life and you're all meeting together, there could be awkwardness or am I comfortable with a handshake? Or no, it was all hugs and, huge, warm, bear hug embraces. You hope for it, and everything all along up till this point would have suggested that that's how it would be.
Right.
But still, it was, I think, unexpected to us that it would feel so natural and comfortable, and that the welcoming would be so well done and sincere. We originally were at my aunt's house for a period of time and just got comfortable and celebrated with Prosecco and maybe some appetizers. And then we went on to this gorgeous wine room as part of this complex and had dinner together and met more family. I wanted to take it all in. And so in some ways, I felt as much of an observer of the event. I wanted to see how my daughter and Kevin were interacting with everybody, and I wanted to just observe my mother. This is my first time to see all of this family in person.
Drink it all in.
Yes, just drink it all in. The next day, we had breakfast.
Yeah.
With everyone, and then we ended up walking around together and toured this beautiful complex where my aunt lived, got to know her community a bit more, which was very nice. And my mother and I kind of walked in the back and just talked to one another about various things. Honestly, I don't even know what. And I don't think it was even important. It was just the idea of spending time with her. And afterwards, we went back to my aunt's house and we had some leftovers, charcuterie board.
There was no lack of food at this event.
There's
always food around.
And I have to say, one of the most special times of this whole entire weekend was doing dishes with my mother. And it was such a basic, throwaway activity, you would think.
Yeah.
But I guess I feel like these are things that a mother and daughter would be doing, day after day growing up, or, it would certainly just be part of the fabric of the relationship. For us to be doing something like that and sharing tea together, I don't know, it was just so incredibly precious. There's so much of the weekend that is a blur, but that portion of it and just really spending that time together. I was washing, she was drying, and I don't know, it was just really, really beautiful. I'm just so grateful that we had the opportunity to do something like that.
I think it is that simple stuff. It's not the big gestures. It's not the grand events. It is that moment when you're sharing just a common task, washing dishes with your mother and just being together.
Yeah, really super special. Super, super special. Yeah.
I still feel when you say that, it's like a glow in the room. I'm so thrilled that you had that experience. I'm so thrilled that I was there for it and that so much family was around.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. It was very hard to leave that evening. Yeah. And I think that my mother had really hoped that I'd be able to stay the next day. I think that you guys really wanted to get home. So we went home and it was hard. And then Megan left that day. And I think that once I realized what time she was leaving, I was trying to arrange something the next day with my mother, and it just kind of didn't work out. She ended up calling, and we ended up going out to lunch on the Tuesday that she was leaving. We went to this Irish pub with a family friend and had just a really lovely time. And I felt like it was a nice finishing touch of the whole thing, especially because it was maybe an homage to your Irish roots. Even though you didn't go, it was just really special. And
you think she thought about that, or does that just have to be a coincidence?
I thought about it. She
really?
might not have. It was completely innocent from her. I don't think she planned that, but I just appreciated it. That
there was a connection there.
Yes, yes. So my mother and I got to have a little bit more time together and before we had to say goodbye. So I ended up taking Bart back home, and my mother then was going off to the airport.
So this whole event happened in early March of 2020. That was a really good thing because March was a bad month, as it turned out to be.
Yeah. In fact, originally we were supposed to meet at the end of March because my aunt that was hosting this was going to be going on a trip. I don't even know why, but it ended up moving up to the beginning of March. What a remarkable blessing.
Yeah, because the next week after that, I remember being at work and getting the word that, we may have some shutdowns while we're trying to figure out what's going on with this pandemic. That was pretty much it. 12th or something of March 2020, Apple said, go home. We'll deal with everything remotely, virtually. That kind of shut down the year and began the month of March that never ended.
Right. That's a good way of saying it. But yes, it was. It was crazy.
The fact that you fit that in.
Because we were in lockdown, I think we were all processing our feelings together. Time it's kind of stood still. So even though I was working, my mother couldn't really resume her normal activities. A lot of everything was just halted the way life previously existed.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was an opportunity for us to kind of continue to get to know each other. We didn't have to compete against just our daily lives.
Sure. I think we'll save a lot of that for the next episode because there's a lot to dig into. What happened in 2020 and what happened as far as us, which was a setback and a move forward in our life, and the amount of family interaction that had to change because of this lockdown.
We really hope you're enjoying following along with us. And if so, please give us a like on YouTube. Please also consider subscribing so that you don't miss any future episodes. And we'd really love to hear your comments and feedback and suggestions. We're trying to help grow our community, and we'd love to engage with our followers.
If you want to find anything more about Finding Gina Marie, we have a website, findingginamarie.com. You can get our Twitter information. You can comment on there also and ask us questions. We'd love to hear from you. We're really enjoying sharing our story with you. So until next time.
Until next time.